This image shows the ECG or EKG that's used for diagnostic, as a diagnostic tool for health. The P wave on the far left designates the signals received from the sinoatrial node as they spread across the atria, causing them to contract. The Q to R to S is the spread of this signal through the ventricles and the ventricular contraction. The T wave is the return of ventricular repolarization, or in other words, the return when the ventricles return to the state before the initial contraction. Blood pressure is the force exerted by the blood vessel against the walls of that blood vessel. When the ventricles contract, blood's pushed into the arteries under great pressure. During this force, that moves blood through the body. The pressure pushing also outward against these arterial walls. And so we measure our blood pressure, which is also an indicator of health. Systolic pressure is the highest pressure in the artery during each heartbeat. Of course, this is when the ventricles are contracting, because recall that ventricles are the main pumping action for the heart. It's approximately 120 millimeters of mercury in a healthy adult. This millimeters or Hg or mercury is the pressure measured as the height to which could push a column of mercury. The diastolic pressure is the lowest pressure in the artery during each heartbeat. So thus this is when the ventricles are relaxing. Again, approximately 80 in a healthy adult. So systolic is the highest pressure occurring when ventricles are contracting, whereas the diastolic is the lower of the two pressure numbers and when the ventricles are relaxing. And so this just shows an image of the example of taking blood pressure, which you all should be aware of. Now we're going to move into the lymphatic system, and components of the lymphatic system include the lymph, the lymphatic vessels, and lymphatic tissues and organs. The lymph is essentially the fluid identical to interstitial fluid that bathes all the bodies of the cells, all the cells of the body. The lymphatic vessels are vessels through which lymph flows. They, like veins, also have valves that prevent backflow, and various lymphoid tissues and organs scattered throughout the body. The functions of the lymphatic system is to return excess interstitial fluid to the bloodstream. This helps to maintain the blood volume by returning this excess fluid to the bloodstream. It also functions to transport fat digestion from the small intestine to the bloodstream. The products of fat digestion are too large to be absorbed in the small intestine through the capillaries of the small intestines. Thus, they enter the lymphatic system vessel known as a lacteal. The lymphatic system is also responsible for helping defend the body against disease-causing organisms and abnormal cells, which we'll discuss further in chapter 13. Elephantiasis is a condition in which parasites block these lymphatic vessels, preventing the return of fluid to the blood. Results in massive swelling, darkening, and thickening of the skin in the affected area. Recall that lymphatic vessels, like veins, have valves preventing this backward flow. And this is the image of this elephantiasis that it was talking about, where parasites block these valve flow of these lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic capillaries, they enter, this extra fluid enters microscopic tubules. They differ from blood capillaries because they end blindly as drainage tubes up around the neck. They're more permeable, which this is critical to fat absorption, and they drain back into larger lymphatic vessels. Lymph eventually enters ducts. It joins with large veins at the base of the neck. And so this just shows our blood. We see our arteries designated in the red up at the top, our blood capillaries, the venule, which is returning, but you also see these lymph capillaries that are running kind of parallel to our capillary system. Lymph nodes are just small bean-shaped structures. We typically feel them in our neck, or we feel for them in our breast as a sign of disease or illness. These lymph nodes filter lymph as it flows through them, and they contain macrophages, which are just types of cells that are capable of phagocytosing bacteria or viruses as they pass through. These lymph nodes also contain lymphocytes, which we'll look more at in chapter 13, that actively defend against disease-causing organisms. Macrophages, they may engulf bacteria, cancer cells, or other even cellular debris. Lymphocytes, when they detect bacteria or viruses, they're stimulated to divide. This increased number of lymphocyte numbers sometimes causes these lymph nodes to swell. That's why we feel for them, which is an indication of infection, symptom of infection. Lymphoid organs include the tonsils, thymus gland, which that's the small structure that was on top of the heart, spleen, region called the Peyer's patches, which are located in the small intestine, as well as the red bone marrow. The tonsils in the throat help protect against inhaled or swallowed debris. The thymus gland, from previous chapter, secretes a hormone that allows for maturation of T cells, which are essential in fighting disease. The spleen is the largest of the lymphoid organs. It's located on the left side of the abdominal region. Acts to help also clear the body of old or damaged red blood cells or platelets. The Peyer's patches found in the small intestine help keep bacteria from penetrating the intestinal wall. And of course, in the red bone marrow, we find it in our long bones, ribs, sternum, and vertebra.